It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We have got a good show for you today, and we would really appreciate it if you could hit that share button to keep it going and growing out to different kinds of readers and viewers. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our friends at MyPillow. All week long, they are focusing now on men's and women's sleep and loungewear. You can literally get one item and another item for 50% off. I believe they call that BOGO among the hip kids. Look awfully comfy for those cold winter nights, man, as the temperatures continue to drop. Some primo loungewear and sleepwear from MyPillow could be just the trick. Simply use the code Dr. Duke, that is DRDUKE. And while you're there, you can save up to 66% on all other items when you visit mypillow.com. We start today with the latest outrage in public schools as left-wing and political groups are pushing back hard at the crazy idea that schools and teachers should be transparent with their lesson plans so parents can see what their kids are learning. This is now the latest outrage. Literally, now we talked about the other day, earlier this week, we talked about how public schools and Michigan had to walk back the claim that parents have no business viewing their kids' curriculum. Well, this is not an isolated problem to the state of Michigan. More and more parents are demanding, as the primary stakeholders, as the ones who are the primary financiers of public school, demanding transparency in school curriculum. Now, why is that a bad thing? It seems to me that the progressive left is always demanding transparency for its issues, right? We need transparency about white racism. We've got to be transparent about the racist history of America. We've got to be transparent about what January 6th was. We got to be transparent. Barack Obama claimed to be the most transparent president in American history, even though he kept tremendous things to himself and there were scandals all over the place. Joe Biden now has claimed that his administration is highly transparent. So that seems to be a good word to progressives. When things are transparent, they're good things. However, when it comes now to your parents being allowed to see what their kids are simply studying in school, suddenly transparency is wicked and evil. It's going to lead to censorship. It's going to lead to all sorts of bad things. If we allow a mom and a dad to see what their third grader or their fifth grader, or heaven help us, their kindergarten kid might be studying or learning on a daily basis.
The alarm was sounded by NBC News, where they put out an article that said they fought critical race theory. Now they're focusing on curriculum transparency. And I love how headlines these days have become leads of the story, or they just put multiple sentences. A headline used to just be, a headline, like 3 words, 4 words. Now it's full on sentences.
That's an argument, not a headline, isn't it?
Yes, there we go. And their subhead, or at least they're calling it a subhead, is conservative activists want schools to post lesson plans online, but free speech advocates warn such policies could lead to more censorship in K-12 schools. And of course, their argument, they're saying, well, lawmakers in at least 12 states now have introduced legislation to require schools to post lists of all their teaching materials online, including books, articles, and videos. The governors of Arizona, Florida, and Iowa, interesting 3 states there, who have previously raised concerns about how teachers discuss racism's impact on politics and society, called for curriculum transparency laws in speeches to their legislatures this month. My argument, why wouldn't you want that?
Exactly.
Why wouldn't you want that? Why? Oh, if you knew the truth of the transparency, the smoke and mirrors. It's the left's smoke and mirrors that they're actually having put forth when they're saying they're being transparent. But now that we actually want transparency, like true transparency, they're like, no, let's put my smoke and mirrors back on top.
We got a real problem, though, because the left knows that critical race theory is in the schools. Moms and dads know that critical race theory is in schools. The teachers know that critical race theory is in the schools. And yet when we ask them about it, they say, no, it's not. And so they look at how much trouble they got in by denying it. Because every time they said, no, we're not using this, hundreds of examples have come forth to show that you are. This shows you the disingenuousness of the argument. Katie's right. If you're not hiding anything in a public school, then why would you care? If you are doing exactly what you're telling us you're doing, nothing but educating our kids the best you can, if there is no politics in your classrooms, if you are not segregating our kids based on race educationally, then you have nothing to worry about. And notice what go back to the headline again. Katie made a point about this. I want to underscore it here. Go back to they fought critical. Notice what it is. It's a warning. It's not a headline. The headline should be parents demand or states demand transparency in the curriculum. But no, notice what the writers of the NBC News did. They warned you first. Hey, don't forget, they fought critical race theory. Now they're focusing on curriculum transparency. See, they were wrong about critical race theory. Now they're going to be wrong about transparency. As Katie pointed out, that is an argument. That is a point of view. It is not a headline. And so you ask yourself, one more sarcastic rhetorical question. These are media people. These are journalists at NBC. Journalists. Isn't it? You have a degree. You were a journalist for a while, weren't you, Katie?
I did not have a degree.
No, but you
were.
And
that's what made me an actual journalist.
Right, you were a journalist. Is it fair to say that what we learn about journalism is journalists don't want transparency?
Correct. And so here's what I get from this, because it's clickbait, which is what they do. They fought critical race theory. Who's the they, and what are their pronouns? But when they can't say parents want transparency in education. Parents want transparency in education.
Yep,
that could be a headline. That's not, it's almost like it's unbiased. It's almost like a neutral position that whoever the copy editor is, or if it's their editor, I'm not sure who picks the headlines.
Estimate for me. If the title was literally parents want transparency in education, what percentage of American parents would be mad about that?
Oh, no.
Would be angry
about that.
Got to be less than 10%, right?
No one. But it's also not clickbait. It's not.
That's
it's
right.
not sexy enough. That's why we have to come up with these fancy things of debate. This is something. Transparency in education should be a universal, absolutely, because it's America. You should be able to see what's going on. But according to Randy Weingarten, one of our favorite presidents of any of the student unions, the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten says, hey, this, call for the, free speech and transparency in education. Well, according to her, good schools and good school districts have always had curriculum transparency, including extensive two-way communication between parents and educators on what we are teaching and how to support our kids. Pretending otherwise is just the latest attempt. See, here's where we pivot.
Right.
Pivot. Latest attempt by Chris Rufo and others. Chris Rufo, we always talk about our friend Chris Rufo because he's actually going in or finding out what's actually happening in the schools and showing mom and dad that this is the dangerous nature of what's happening in our public schools. Chris Rufo and others, we exploit. Who is that? Others to exploit the frustration of COVID. Oh, okay. Pivot to COVID, as we always do, to create a toxic environment where the biggest losers are children and their recovery. It's for the children you're trying to... okay.
Please just listen to what Katie said. Randy Weingarten actually just said that we've always been transparent. We're the ones who've called for transparency. We have a long-standing transparent relationship with our kids. Chris Rufo now doesn't want us to have it. Wait, that's just what they're asking for. What we're asking for is transparency. And so she says, we've always had it, but suddenly we're not going to have it now because the people who are asking for it want it for nefarious reasons. I mean, the intellectual games these people play are pretty stupid.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
Critical race theory advocates are, as always, doing what they do, trying to make it so our youngest and most vulnerable students have to learn critical race theory. And now it's our special education preschool students they need to be woke. And if they're not woke enough, we're going to make them woke. But we at least have 3 grassroots organizations who in North Carolina are trying to make it so that our children actually maybe get an education. We're talking about Education First Alliance, No Left Turn in Education, and the North Carolina Citizens for Constitutional Rights. They're fighting back against our preschool special education students having to learn about critical race theory. They're demanding an end to the funding of the statewide preschool program that contains actual modules titled Equity and Cultural Responsiveness in the Early Childhood Classroom. And the call to halt the funding of the program came just within days of the state school board's approval of the contract with the University of North Carolina, UNC Chapel Hill's Frank Porter Graham's Child Development Center. A press release had stated that adding the $7 million in funding was granted from the IDEA Preschool Handicapped Grant, which was awarded to North Carolina by the Office of Special Education Programs at the U.S. Education Department. So boil all that gobbledygook down, you got the feds going into the states then going into the individual schools, and your children, special ed preschoolers, will have to learn how to be woke.
Special ed preschoolers with special needs. So think about this for a second. They're dealing with 3 and 4-year-olds, 3 and 4-year-olds who actually have some serious disability. And you would think that dealing with a 3 and a 4-year-old with a serious disability would keep your grubby hands busy trying to normalize education for those kids. Instead, even that constituency, a 3-year-old with a serious learning disability, forced to study woke critical race theory. Think about that for a second. This is what they want to do across the country. North Carolina is a template for this. No child will escape. No child will escape this, right? It doesn't matter how handicapped, how in need of other social programs they are, no matter how learning is something that's difficult for them for a variety of reasons, those kids still are going to be targeted for racial awokeness. And that's what they're doing to your children. And it makes the point that we've been trying to make all along. Why? Why send your kids to preschool? Preschool used to be basically daycare for 3 and 4-year-olds. You weren't teaching them stuff. You weren't giving them language lessons. You weren't even showing them the alphabet and having them cut triangles out with blunt scissors. That was 5-year-olds. It was really a heightened daycare where they had activities and games and songs, things to sort of try to socialize children. So why send your kids now to preschool when 3 and 4-year-olds are being socialized now with racist critical race theory? If you could find any other way to babysit your kids yourself or find a religious daycare where they're not being completely bombarded with this divisive worldview, you'd be better off.
You would be better off. I like how Sloan Rackmith, the president of Education Alliance, First Alliance, put it. Sloan said, with this vote, North Carolina schools became the most radically divisive education system in America. Yes, we are seeing critical race theory in schools elsewhere, but it's mainly taught in the higher grades. But preying on disabled 3-year-old children, getting them to participate in a political movement and to hate themselves based on skin color in the process shows our public schools to be more morally corrupt than all others.
And with all due respect, Sloan, for what you made was a great argument. Please see what you just said. You just said that critical race theory is in the school at the higher levels, not at the lower levels. And they're already doing it to 3-year-olds. Do you really think they skipped the middle school kid in the elementary schools? Do you think that they bypassed? It's okay for the higher. You think the new North Carolina state, do you really think that the North Carolina school system said, you know what, critical race theory is good for high school kids? Not necessarily. We're not going to expose middle and elementary school kids to it, but we will go ahead and expose your preschoolers. It's much more broad than you think it is, Sloan.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
You know, a lot of students have headed back to campus. You're heading back quite quickly, and I know he's excited about it. But, you know, already at the end of last semester, students were thinking about this upcoming semester, how they're going to approach it. And, in times like these, how are you going to save money? Well, New York University, NYU, they gave students some tips about how you can save on money this upcoming year here. And naturally, obviously, it means you just don't eat a lot of food. Just stop eating food, because that's smart, right, NYU? Well, the Wall Street Journal actually put out a story called NYU is top ranked in loans that alumni and parents struggle to repay. Ouch. Ooh, a zinger. That one hurt a little. Well, the Wall Street Journal reported that NYU, it leaves students in a lot of debt. And not just a couple $1,000s, and it's going to even tens of thousands. We're talking like hundreds of thousands of dollars in debt. And so NYU actually put out their own webpage called Ways to Save. So they're trying to like cover up the fact that they're leaving their students in debt for decades for some of these students. That's why do you think a lot of the alumni from a lot of these big universities like NYU are the ones also calling for getting rid of all college debt? There's a correlation there because they're not able to pay it back. So on the NYU's actual Ways to Save webpage, they put a bunch of subheads about how to pay for college, how to pay for books, how to pay for food, how to pay for entertainment. And under their food, they actually said, we all know that eating is important. Thanks, NYU. Not only eating, but making sure that what we are eating is nutritious. When we think about food and how to save with our meals, one thing many students forget is that they can get discounts at many different restaurants around campus. Another great way to save is by going food shopping and making your meals at home. And you can find coupons for food on various websites and even check prices to see which places have the best deals. Many students also like to take advantage of the many programs that offer free food on campus. When searching for an event on the NYU event calendar, you can even filter for events with free food. Wow. NYU's website really is helping out. But according to the Wall Street Journal in their report, as you saw that article, some of the other things you can do is, just eat less food. They actually suggested eat less food.
This is the university suggesting to it, hey, we know we're expensive. We're not going to fire the 88th diversity officer we just hired for $250K. We're not going to get rid of our over-bloated administration. No. What we're going to do is keep tuition really high and say, maybe you should eat less. Hey, what do you think? How about you just don't eat so much, right? Pay us everything you owe us and don't worry about food. Now, I don't know if I remember exactly the day it was, but about a year and a half ago, we did a show about something very similar. And I think it was centered out of New York as well, where schools and educators were beginning to tell students, particularly young women students, that one of the best ways to help pay for college was to become sex workers. That's exactly in the line of this, right? Sex work, right, used to be really evil. Feminists would call it because it was primarily female work, right? Sex workers, were exploited. They were women who were run over by a terribly patriarchal culture. But all of a sudden, when it was a way to pay for your college, right? Some girls were making thousands of dollars a night in this sex trade, right? Where they were able to then pay off their student loans. See, so being an exploited sex worker is okay if you got to pay your school debt. And the same thing is here. You want to come to New York, who wouldn't want to come to NYU and pay huge tuition fees on top of exorbitant housing and food fees? Come here, stop eating. I mean, what better way? Maybe they should identify themselves as spas. Instead of NYU College, we're a spa. You pay us a lot of money, and we'll make sure you don't eat. And when you graduate, you'll be skinny and broke.
Okay, yeah. One other thing they say in the article is that, if you want to save some money while attending NYU, just finish school early, which is so easy to do because they don't make like all these diversity, equity, racial, this, that, and otherwise classes mandatory and just add on all the credits that they must continue to take to get the degree to make sure they're ready to be out there in the workforce.
But if you cut out all that time of breakfast, lunch, and dinner,
that's true,
right? Maybe you're gonna have more time.
They also say you could sign up on their website to find babysitting programs for all those just New York moms and dads who don't actually have kids because it's hustling, bustling New York, and they're career-minded. They don't have time to have kids, so I don't know who they're babysitting.
Go ahead, get a second job. Don't eat. Do all the things you got to do to get to NYU.
Also, one more thing, live with a senior citizen.
Yeah.
are you stealing their money on top of it? Is that what it is? I mean, just live with the seniors. Just live with the senior citizens. It's New York. You can't even fit yourself in one of those small apartments, like just in a small room. But okay, live with the senior citizen. Good luck to you. Anyway, Wall Street Journal, just so everyone's aware, did report that students at NYU collectively have borrowed $3.4 billion in federal plus loans in just the last decade. And that's, of course, more than any other school. So, I mean, I'm glad that NYU is finally giving their students some tips on how to save money. But here's, in all honesty, moms and dads, this is a plea, and college students, if you're out there right now, from me to you, if you have questions about ways to save money in all seriousness, please email askduke@fpeusa.org. And if there seems to be enough interest that there are college kids or moms and dads or grandpas and grandmas, anyone who wants to know about how to save money, especially when you're in college, but just in general, if there's enough interest, I will make a little video series on it because I am parsimonious and I'm proud of it. And that's how I can just sit here and talk to you guys all day for funsies.
I would simply just throw in at the end, notice how there's never anything the university has to do to make your financial resources last longer. It's never our job. We never have to be more frugal. We don't have to miss a meal. None of your professors are engaging in sex work. Well, I'm not sure that's true either. Anyway, just note for the burden is on you to pay them the full amount, not on them to streamline what they're offering. Hey, it's time for Instant Classic, and we've been dissecting a little bit of satire this week. We're defending satire because satire is under fire by the progressives. Apparently, the typical progressive voter is such a low info voter that satire fools them. When they read satire, they don't understand it's satire, and they fall for the joke. And to that is why the left wants to suppress, if not censor, satire. The Second Amendment, it's a First Amendment thing, right? Satire is one of those things that is false information now or fake news to many on the left. And so we've been propping up the beautiful science, the artistic nature of satire. It's not easy to write. It's not easy to write compelling satire. And we've been talking about A Modest Proposal by Jonathan Swift. Again, this is the full title, A Modest Proposal for Preventing the Children of Poor People from Being a Burden to Their Parents or Country and for Making Them Beneficial to the Public. And how? Swift says, tongue-in-cheek, if you're not going to feed them, you're not going to educate them, you're not going to take care of these poor Irish babies, England, now that you have come to dominate Ireland, maybe we ought to just fatten them up and sell them like goose or turkeys or little piglets for rich people to eat. That's the nature of the satire. And I've got to show you again, show the clips here, Mike. We've got how careful, if you're going to write serious satire, you have to come across as utterly believable. Before the narrator, the anonymous narrator, even gets to the point of selling those babies for food, listen to how careful he sets up the premise. This is how good satire works and makes otherwise really intelligent people fall for the gag. He goes on to say, the anonymous narrator, I can think of no one objection that will possibly be raised against this proposal of mine. Notice, he hasn't told them the proposal yet. Unless it should be urged that the number of people will be thereby much lessened in the kingdom. The only argument that you're going to get when I tell you my proposed solution is there'll be fewer Irish people. If you were the England who dominated Ireland at that time, would less Irishmen really bother you? Even the one possible objection that he cedes is one that the colonial power probably isn't going to be too bothered by. I can think of no one objection that will possibly be raised against this proposal unless it should be urged that the number of people will be thereby lessened in the kingdom. This I freely own, and was indeed one principal design in offering it to the world. Is that really a negative or a positive? If you're England, do you want more Irish? I desire the reader will observe that I calculate my remedy for this one individual kingdom of Ireland, and for no other country that ever was, is, or I think ever can be upon the earth. Therefore, let no man talk to me about other expedients, of taxing our absentees at 5 shillings a pound, of using neither clothes nor household furniture, except what is of our own growth and manufacture, of utterly rejecting the materials and instruments that promote foreign luxury. 1,000 ways we could raise money to feed those Irish kids, but we're not going to ask for it, he says. Of curing the expensiveness of pride, vanity, idleness, and gaming in our women, of introducing a vein of parsimony, of prudence, of temperance, of learning to love our country. Therefore, I repeat, don't try to talk me out of this, because you and I both know we English aren't going to change our way of life to help starving babies. And if that's where we are, then my modest proposal is going to work. And he still hasn't hit him with it. So he's already argued the case in a way that they can't unargue, and they haven't heard his proposal yet. That's serious satire.
All right, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, we're giving a shout out to Dawn from New Lebanon, Ohio. Dawn, thank you for supporting us. And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Katie. He's Dr. Duke, I guess.
Guess so. Till next time, stay educated.